when you're in contact with people and their air that they're breathing because it remains suspended in the air, then that can be a very real reason why it isn't really evident that masks are working well. But I know masks work well because I have worn them in multiple situations where people on either side of me were positive and I have not become infected. Sometimes we use mandates because we don't want to take the time to explain the science and the data.
As a scientist, I'm just going to provide the facts and let people draw their own conclusions. Here's the facts. With a lot of respiratory pathogens, they get transmitted through large water droplets, especially when we cough and sneeze. Now, the primary mode of transmission of SARS coronavirus 2 is through aerosols. So there's three sizes of water droplets that can come out of your lungs. Large water droplets, so those are droplets that are over 60 microns. They have this trajectory under gravity, right, where they quickly fall to the ground. Then there's small water droplets. These are between 10 and 60 microns in diameter. And then there's what we call droplet nuclei, which are smaller than 10 microns. So when we talk about aerosols, we're talking about these droplet nuclei and small water droplets. And if you want to visualize it, when you go out in the cold air in the middle of the winter and, you talk about I can see my breath, that's the aerosols that you're breathing out. That's the aerosol condensing in the air. You see a big plume, and it doesn't just drop to the ground. I wear glasses, so when we breathe on, the lenses and fog them up, the moisture we're getting on there, that's the aerosol. Scientific studies before this pandemic have shown that low-cost masks, and so we're talking about surgical masks and the cloth masks we're wearing, these low-cost masks have pore sizes that range between 80 and 500 microns in size, so a huge range, right? The diameter of the virus is 1 micron. The largest possible small droplet that can comprise a typical aerosol and 2 viral particles is 62 microns in diameter. So I just want to put that in perspective. The smallest pore size is 80. So that means the largest droplet coated with the virus can pass right through. Air is always going to travel, the easiest way out. So most of the aerosol leaks out, going up above our nose. The other leak points are right at the cheeks here. What people say is, okay, there's a leak points, but if I have a properly fitting mask, surely, what you said can't be true, right? So let me see if I can show you this. We've been told to use up to 3 masks. So I've got one, and I actually don't know if I'm going to be able to get all these on, because one of the things that's interesting, actually, my right ear pin now is permanently deformed a little bit. It sticks out from my head more than the other one. Because of all the mask wearing. But so let me put on, here's 2 masks. Here's 3. I'll put on a 4th one. I don't know if we'll get the 5th one on. Okay, so I got 5 masks. They're 3-ply surgical masks, so 15 layers. I'm going to seal it around my mouth. If this is true, the aerosols have come through, then this should fog up. We'll see. Can you see that fog?
Yep.
Now, watch this. I've made a cross. Can you see my eyes through that cross? This is crazy.
Well, let's move on to N95s. Here's a study by Shaw et al. That shows even for an N95 where you glue it onto a board, and that's where most of these mask studies are done. They literally glue the mask onto a mannequin or a board. Now, do you glue your mask on your face? Of course not. So if it's glued on, they say, well, it has 46% effectiveness. But what if you put a gap on it? 3% effectiveness.
New study, face mask usage correlates with higher death rates using data from 35 different countries and 602 million people. Peer-reviewed study confirms previous research and cautions use of face masks, my God, may have harmful unintended consequences. April 19th, peer-reviewed. Correlation between mask compliance and COVID-19 outcomes in Europe. While no cause-effect conclusions could be inferred from this observational analysis, which it is, the lack of negative correlation between mask usage and COVID cases and deaths, meaning that it didn't show a decrease, suggests that the widespread use of masks at a time when an effective intervention was most needed, i.e. during the certain period, 2001 to 21, was not able to reduce transmission. Here's another one from The Lancet. Revisiting pediatric COVID-19 cases in countries with and without school mask requirements, that they say, look, we replicated the CDC study and we found similar results. However, when they incorporated a larger sample and longer period, they showed no significant relationship between masks and their case rates. Here's a new one, and the reason I brought it up today. Carbon dioxide rises beyond acceptable safety levels in children. under nose and mouth covering. In conclusion, we have produced experimental data that show that carbon dioxide content in inhaled air rises on average to 13,000 to 13,750 parts per million, no matter whether children wear a surgical or a higher level mask. This is far beyond the level of 2,000 parts per million, considered the limit of acceptability. Here's the 2015 only random controlled trial you will find on cloth masks from the British Medical Journal. The rates of all infection outcomes were the highest in the cloth mask arm. This study, the random controlled trial of cloth masks, moisture retention, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may increase your risk of infection. Cloth masks should not be recommended. May 2020, in pooled analysis of all these different cases, 2 studies in universities, 1 study with face masks, household studies, laboratory studies. In the pooled analysis of everything, we found no significant reduction in influenza transmission with the use of face masks. There is limited evidence for their effectiveness in preventing influenza virus transmission, either when worn by the infected person for source control or when worn by uninfected persons to reduce exposure. Our systematic review found no significant effect of face masks on transmission of laboratory-confirmed influenza.
People often say it's like trying to stop mosquitoes getting into your garden using a chain link fence. It's that sort of size. So they don't work. And there are lots of people walking around, not so much in Florida, where I'm living currently. They wear blue medical masks, these concertina things across your face. They're not filters. Masks only really work if they filter the air. That is, they pass through a medium that allows the air to go through, but not the bits in it. But blue medical masks, they've never been intended to be filters. What are they? They're splash guards. So if you're a doctor or a nurse, you know that. You put them on when you attend to someone coming into the ER. You might get splashed with blood, contaminated biological fluids. Somebody might be drunk and spit at you. So these are splash guards to stop fluids getting into your nose and mouth, and you probably wear protective goggles these days. That's what it's for. And then if you wear a cloth mask, come on, you hold them up to the sunlight, you can see through them. You can put a needle through them. Viruses are about 1,000 times smaller than that. So there's no way they would work.
The only mask that is proven to work is the one that they don't tell people about and that nobody wears. This is the only mask that works. So this is called a P100 mask. It is 150 times more effective than an N95 mask. This is the only mask that has a chance of working. It's never been tested for the coronavirus, but it should be 150 times better than almost zero.
You put this on like this, and then you strap it, and then you talk to people just like this. And this will filter it out. But
this mask works only in one direction. It will work to protect you.
But not somebody
But there's no filter on the outside. Because if it was filtered on the outside, you wouldn't be able to breathe.
Right. Okay.
So it works, but it only works one way. And if they were really serious about protecting the American public, they would require everyone to wear this, in which case everyone would rebel and we would have no mask mandate.
The virus can be also infect you via your eyes. It basically likes to land on the mucous membranes and then from your eyes it could go down into your nose anyway. So I think people should not bother with face masks.
It's quite dangerous. A study published in ClinMed, it was called Adverse Effects of Prolonged Mask Use Among Healthcare Professionals During COVID-19. They found that 71% of people reported headaches from wearing masks, skin breakdown, 50% of people, and impaired cognition. A quarter of people wearing masks suffered impaired cognition. Increased harmful bacteria in the respiratory tract and around the face. Increased carbon dioxide content in our lungs, which leads to lower oxygenation of our blood and brain and leads to hyperventilation.
So here's the table. We see that the children had around 0.26 to 0.28 carbon dioxide percentage with no masks, both pre this experiment and after. So that's natural, normal, healthy. Inhaled air with the masks on, 2 types, nearly 6 times the carbon dioxide. Here it is, RCT. I'll show you a little more detail. Note the legal limit for room air is around 0.2% carbon dioxide content. And around your mouth, it'll be a little higher with no mask because, you know, we are flowing out carbon dioxide. But remember, the unmasked children natural level was down here in this experiment. And look at where the carbon dioxide levels are with the masks on, with the younger children being even more affected, as noted by the authors.
This measures the amount of CO2 that's in the air. Can we just look at the ocean numbers? Carbon dioxide levels and potential health problems are indicated below. From 250 to 350 is the background normal outdoor level. 350 to 1,000 ppm, typical level found in occupied spaces with good air exchange. 1,000 to 2,000 level associated with complaints of drowsiness and poor air. 2,000 to 5,000 level associated with headaches, sleepiness, and stagnant, stale, stuffy air, poor concentration, loss of attention, increased heart rate, and slight nausea may also be present. And then 5,000 ppm or more. This indicates unusual air conditions where high levels of the other gases also could be present. Toxicity or oxygen deprivation could occur.
Deep, calm breathing. I think we got the idea right. All right, let's try this one. Plastic face shield. Just breathe ever. I mean, obviously it looks like there's air all over, but even this, you can tell the CO2 gas is getting caught in by a space. Clearly not as much as wearing a mask, but aren't you shocked that this is even having an effect at all? We're up to 1,500. We're nearing 2,000 even with this. Let's see if it's still going up. Still going up. As it collects inside of this mask. I've seen videos of children in Asia wearing these masks in school. Sometimes this and a mask. Imagine what that does to you. So we've hit 2,000, which is now we know is not safe for any school or any workplace environment. 4,000. Now we're going over 5,000. Now we're into what's known to be a danger zone, 6,000. Parts per million, CO2, 6,600. This is a cloth mask. I thought when I was wearing a cloth mask that this was actually safer. So up in the 9,000s with both of these masks. Upper 8,000s. Unbelievable.
If it is about following the science, shouldn't apply science everywhere and at every time and to all people, not depending on where you are. Restrictions that were imposed on the people, they simply did not make any sense. Are you familiar with the Fogan effect? And I would like you to elaborate on that. Basically, there was a study done, peer-reviewed, that once a person has been had contracted the virus and continues to wear the masks, it will lead to a statistically significant increase of severe courses, hospitalization, and even more deaths. How do you explain this to people if you want them to adhere to these restrictions?
We will have hopefully health ministers in September. Maybe that's more of a question for policymakers than for our scientists.
We will have hopefully health ministers in September. Maybe that's more of a question for policymakers than for our scientists.
When you see powerful, well-educated, knowledgeable people telling everyone else, you know, something like this, I think there's a game afoot, a horrible game afoot. So there's been experimental studies, many of them, and you know, there's loads of literature, and I cite several studies. I cite a meta-analysis which contains about 100 other studies. So there's no question they do not work. Do not work, folks. It's not my opinion. That's what the experimental evidence says, and I'm telling you, when the public health officials tell you otherwise, CDC, Fauci, and so on, they are lying. Nothing more than that.
This is crazy.